so here we have our sample question. It says identify the slope and the y-intercept. So on the test, you need to know the slope and the y-intercept. How do we do that? They're going to give you an equation. When you have an equation, your first thing is not to say, oh, there's my constant, there's my coefficient of x. Don't do that. You have to get y by itself. If y is not by itself, that's not going to be your constant. That's not going to be your final coefficient. You have to get y by itself. So don't jump that step. Once you see it says identify slope and y-intercept, ask yourself, is y by itself? If it's not, we're going to solve for the specified variable of y. Remember how we do that? There's the equal sign, so you have a left and a right. Underline the y. Once you underline the y, then we know that we're going to have to move anything that's added or subtracted to the underlying variable. So notice this 2x is added to the y, so we have to move the x term. When we move the x term, we do the additive inverse of what this is. Not the opposite of what this sign is, but the opposite of what 2x is. So if this was a negative 2x, we would have to add. Since this is a positive 2x, then the opposite would be negative. Okay? So we're going to do a negative 2x. It's the opposite of what this is. If we do a negative 2x here, we're going to have to balance the moving step by doing a negative 2x on the right-hand side. These are opposites. We purposely made them inverses of each other so they can cancel out. So I'm left with positive 9y. You don't have to put the plus sign, but if it was a subtraction sign, you have to bring it down. Now on this side, you got to remember, a constant and something that has a variable, you cannot put together. You got to keep them separate. They're not the same. Remember, this is a constant coefficient variable. No match. So I always told you, put the variable term first, and then stick the constant term last. Notice since this is positive, I put plus 6. Because we want to do it in that y equals mx plus b, where the constant term is last. So that's why that's last. We still don't have y by itself. We have a coefficient. To get rid of a coefficient, we have to divide. Since this is a positive 9, we're going to divide both sides by positive 9. Now notice this side has 2 items. It doesn't have 1 item. So what you want to do is divide every single term. Even though there's one side, there's 2 terms here. So divide each item by the positive 9. So this, the x term is divided by 9, and this constant is also going to be divisible by 9. Now these cancel out, so we get y by itself. Now here, 2 divided by 9 doesn't go in evenly. You're going to see if you can reduce the fraction. 2, yeah, you can't break that down. 3, or 9, you can break down as 3 times 3. But there's nothing that cancels out. 2 on top, 3's at the bottom, no match. So that just means that this cannot be simplified except for sign issues. Negative divided by positive is going to be a negative. 2 over 9 cannot reduce, so keep it as 2 over 9. And remember, because the x is on top, we can slide it away from the parenthesis, or from the fraction bar. Okay, so the x is not part of the fraction bar. Over here, 6 over 9. No, that doesn't divide in evenly. There is a remainder, so we can't put it as a decimal, but we're going to keep it as a fraction. The question is, can you reduce 6/9? Just like we did here, we said 2 couldn't break down, but 9 could break down as 3 and 3, but nothing canceled out. Let's do the same thing here. 6, you know, is 2 times 3. That's prime factorization. Trying to break down 6 into nothing but prime numbers, where you can't break it down any further besides 1 and the number. 9 can be broken down as 3 times 3. And here you definitely have something on top that matches something at the bottom. And as long as it's all multiplication or factors, you can cancel something on top that matches something on the bottom. So we're going to be left with 2/3. Positive divided by positive would be a positive 2/3. Okay, so don't leave it at 6/9. You have to reduce it down to 2/3. But once you get that done, notice y is by itself. Because it's by itself, Now is the only time that we can grab the coefficient of x. So here we can say the slope is -2/9. And then this, the constant, we know is the y-intercept. Remember, y-intercept is an ordered pair. X is 0. And then the y would be the constant, 2/3. They call it the b. Some people think it's just the y, however you want to say, or the constant. Just know that this would be 0, and this would be your b, your constant, or what y equals. And your slope is just the coefficient, not the variable. And make sure you include the sign, -2/9. You could not do that in the very beginning, because if you said, oh, my constant is 6. No, we found our constant is 2/3. Oh, my coefficient of x is 2. No, it was -2/9. You have to get y by itself before we can grab the coefficient of x and the constant to get your slope and y-intercept.